We are back after a very eventful draft weekend. Tyler, what did you think of the draft?
I had a great time watching, honestly, and we were talking, I think, on our final mock draft, if a lot of the other drafts had been like this, where it felt like it was so actually exciting to
Mhm.
see, especially in the first round. There were so many different types of picks that each team could use, and the quality and the talent, especially in the top 10. Uh,
Mhm.
was just it absolutely unremarkable, so to say. I think that it is. This might be a draft that we look back 10 years from now and see like that's a Hall of Famer, that's a Hall of Famer, he's a Hall of Famer, he's a Hall of Famer. You know what I mean? Potentially Hall of Famer. He's had 5 Pro Bowls. Like so on. It just feels like that's one of those drafts, and it's going to be really interesting as well, especially with the quarterback situations. And I think that's what made this draft really interesting. There were
Mhm.
5 quarterbacks that uh, could have honestly gone anywhere. I mean, maybe Mac Jones was the only one that couldn't have gone number one. Uh, there were 4 elite pass catchers, if you're including Kyle Pitts, and then the 3 top receivers. And a lot of teams made decisions where a lot of those guys were also still available. We're going to get more into like the QB situation as well. Uh,
Mhm.
all the trades that happened before the draft, I think, kind of took away a little bit of the excitement of some of the trading up uh, during draft day specifically. But all in all, it was really interesting to watch. And I think we did a pretty good job on our mock draft. Uh,
Yeah, no, I think we did too.
so,
But
uh, go ahead.
I was going to say, just to kind of speak on some of like what you said, I think the draft was very interesting because a lot of talent made it down into the second half of the first round because
Mm-hmm.
5 of the first 15 picks were uh, quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And so not that those picks were unwarranted, it just pushes talent down the board because the quarterback position is valued higher. And so for me, I really enjoyed watching it. I think it was very suspenseful. One of the things that caught me by surprise was there were not a ton of trades. I think there were only 3 trades in the first round.
Yeah.
And that kind of set the tone for the rest of the draft. Not a lot of teams traded up, really traded back.
Yeah.
So I don't know. For me, it was interesting, but to me, the most interesting part of the draft was where all the quarterbacks went.
Mm-hmm.
That's the most valuable position in football, and I think this year had a really loaded quarterback class. The last time we saw 5 quarterbacks go in the first round, it was Baker Mayfield when Baker Mayfield went first overall, and I think this class is head and shoulders above those 5 quarterbacks right now.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
Hopefully
Mhm.
3 of the 5 of them can turn out to be starters. I know the jury's still out on Sam Darnold, so that could make it 4 out of those 5. But for me, I think this is the best quarterback class we've seen in years, and it was exciting to kind of watch and see where they're going to be playing at. So,
Yeah, yeah, and that goes to one of the things, especially 5 years from now, we're going to look back at this draft, and it's going to be, I think, for Jacksonville and New York, I think the correct picks were made. Now, if they pan out, who knows? Everyone thought Sam Darnold was going to pan out for the Jets, and I don't think it was all Sam Darnold's fault personally, but at the time, it
mhm.
was the right pick. It was a stretch. But then you get to the
Yeah.
49ers at pick number 3 and picking Trey Lance over Justin Fields and Mac Jones. Not saying he doesn't have the potential, but it's going to be really interesting to see 5 years from now when Trey Lance is supposed to be the starter and if he is still the starter. Because even then, you have guys like Jared Goff and Carson Wentz. In that draft, they go 1-2. And neither one of them are with their respective teams. Same thing with Andrew Luck and Jameis Winston as well. And there's a big quarterback controversy who's going to be taken first. Even though Andrew Luck had a great career, just kind of hampered with injuries, and that wasn't all of his doing. It'll be interesting to see
Mhm.
which of these quarterbacks pan out, which of these quarterbacks can stay healthy, which of these quarterbacks can have the best organization around them to succeed. And so that's going to be kind of my first question to you is of the 5 quarterbacks taken right now, which one do you think is most set up for success as of today?
As of today,
Uh-huh.
I'm going to go kind of against what you said, and I think Trey Lance is going into the best situation.
Okay.
I think Trey Lance has a team that was in the Super Bowl 2 years ago that has not had a lot of turnover. The offensive line is better than when they were in the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
And he has a starting caliber quarterback ahead of him.
Yeah.
So he has no pressure coming into that situation to learn quickly and be the starter because they already have a guy that's pretty set up.
Yeah.
And so while Trey Lance, I'm sure, wants to compete and come into his role prepared, he doesn't have to. Jimmy Garoppolo is there and can take some of that pressure off of him, help him learn the system. And I think that's going to benefit Trey Lance a lot. I think that is the perfect situation for him.
Yeah.
I do like the Trey Lance pick. To me, I just think he's the riskiest quarterback of them all. He has, in the past, it's shown a history that one of the biggest things NFL franchises struggle to fix is just flat out throwing accuracy. And he is the most inaccurate quarterback in the draft.
Yeah.
And so that for me is my biggest concern. But I don't know. What do you think about? Not about Trey Lance, but what do you think about your question and who has the most ready scenario?
I do agree with what you're saying. Trey Lance coming into the coming to the 49ers. The one thing though, I think that's going to make it tough for Trey Lance is I do agree with you just based off my analysis of Trey Lance. I thought he was the weaker of the 5 quarterbacks. Now he has a really high ceiling. He has a much higher ceiling than someone like Mac Jones, so to say, but he has a significantly lower floor in my opinion. And so that's why I think if we're looking at someone who is going to be going into the best situation personally is everything you just said, where he's coming in and there's a veteran and starter that's already there, and with an organization that's very experienced, one that you know very well. I'm looking at Mac Jones, and Mac Jones being picked up by the Patriots. You're going to have Bill Belichick, Josh McDaniels. Like they have a proven system that works, and I think it was actually kind of unanimous of the 5 quarterbacks that were there, intelligence wise and knowing the game wise. Mac Jones knew the game the best. So if you go in there and you bring that level of smartness, I'm clearly not that smart because I don't know what the correct word is there. But into that organization, I think he has a lot of opportunity to be successful. Now, are the physical tools there as much as the other 4 guys? No, but I mean, not to make – I know everyone's making the analogy, but when Tom Brady was drafted, no, everyone thought the same thing. It is definitely going to be a situation of how big is the fight in the dog, and not the size of the dog in the fight, so to say. If Mac Jones comes in and from day one and can grind and just prove his worth and continue to try and get better, he has the capabilities to be a very successful quarterback in that system. Nothing against Trey Lance or anything like that. I do agree with what you're saying. I think he's coming into a great situation, but it's a little bit of the riskier pick. I would have thought that Mac Jones might have been the better play there if you're looking for immediate return, because I think Mac Jones could sit for a year and then come in and start and be NFL ready. We don't know that about Trey Lance, and Jimmy Garoppolo only has 1 year left on his contract. So they're going to be expecting him to come in after just 1 year of learning to come in. And he hasn't really played any serious competition in a year. If he rides the bench, that's going to be a whole nother year of him not really having any competition. His first legitimate game could be 2 years after his FCS championship game. And in 2019. And he had the one Trey Lance game that they threw for him and in the fall of 2020, just so then they can get some more game film on him. But that I don't think that really counts as being on a week out basis of the season.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I do like that Mac Jones was selected by the Patriots. I think he's a good fit. And I actually think he's a little bit more athletic than people give him credit for. I think they take away from him because when you watch him move around, especially when he starts to run, he looks slightly awkward. And I think part of that's just his body shape. But, I mean, he ran a faster 40 time than Joe Burrow and Baker Mayfield. And he actually has a pretty impressive arm. At his pro day, he threw multiple 65-yard plus balls in the
Yeah.
air. And so for me, a lot of the concerns about him aren't necessarily about his ability to like read and understand and play the game. It's just kind of about his physical tools.
Yeah.
And so I do like that pick. I am concerned that he had such great weapons at Alabama that he may not necessarily have that in New England, but we'll see. It's the front office's job to put the best players out on the field for Mac Jones to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. Outside of the first round, I know we kind of skipped over some of the top guys in Trevor Lawrence and Mac Jones, but there were 4 other quarterbacks taken in 5 picks. I think there are 3 quarterbacks taken in 4 picks.
Yeah. Kyle Trask wrapped up the second round, picked by Tampa Bay. Then Kellen Mond was taken by Minnesota, and then Davis Mills was taken by the Houston Texans, both at the latter 2 at the start of the third round. And I actually think that Kyle Trask and Kellen Mond are going to go into great organizations. You've talked very highly of Kellen Mond over the past couple months as a sleeper pick, and I think he's going to come in a similar situation, much lower expectations. But he has the tool set that's there, and he's going to be behind Kirk Cousins. And this could even be a situation. I'm not sure what Kirk Cousins' contract length.
2 or 3 years, I think.
2 or 3 years. So that's given him a couple years to definitely hone his skills. He is, as you mentioned, throughout his 4 years of college, has consistently improved, and stats have gone up every single year. And that Minnesota team does actually have some weapons around him with a growing wide receiver core, an improving offensive line, and Dalvin Cook as your running back. That's not a bad organization to be in. And Kyle Trask being behind Tom Brady, that's going to be a pretty solid kind of rookie year, learning from the best that's ever played the game. The one that actually concerns me is I do feel for Davis Mills. I think he's going to have an opportunity actually to potentially start even, depending on the Deshaun Watson situation. I know Tyrod Taylor is there, so if Deshaun Watson leaves, Tyrod Taylor would be the day 1 starter, but Tyrod Taylor also has a lot of it is injury prone. Not all of his own doing, so to say. But even in if he does get injured, then Davis Mills is coming into a really weak organization that is in a rebuilding mode. And it's tough for a rookie QB, especially as we've seen with Sam Darnold and just kind of his growth, to come in there. And there's still some things you need to work on, but the organization is not really fully prepared for a rookie to come in who hasn't gotten his sea legs yet on the NFL. So that's one I'd want to keep an eye on of those quarterbacks.
So for me, I think Kellen Mond is in the best situation. I think he's the best quarterback of the 3, but I also think he's in the best situation as well. I really like some of his game film. He was my number 6 quarterback. He was just barely outside the top 5. But the one that I do feel bad for, like you said, is Davis Mills. Davis Mills has all the physical tools. He has the arm strength, the size, the strength to be an NFL quarterback.
Yeah.
But I think he came out a year too early. He had a pretty bad knee injury. I think it was freshman or sophomore year of college. And I just don't think he's ready. I think if he stayed in a year and came out as a senior, he'd be a first round pick next year.
Yeah.
But I think he came out a little early, and for me, I just don't think that is going to bode well for him.
Yeah.
Especially going to an organization like Houston. He's in a worst case scenario.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Who knows? Honestly, with these quarterbacks in the draft, it's kind of a crapshoot. You never know. You have an idea and you can kind of grade them, but sometimes you just never know.
Well, but a lot of it though, and quarterbacks get too much praise and they get too much criticism. And he's going to be going into an organization that is not prepared, I think, to handle this. They are still just trying to keep Deshaun Watson. If Deshaun Watson is able to play even, and Deshaun Watson, which we haven't even heard that much about because the NFL draft kind of took over, so we really don't even know where those lawsuits and those allegations are at. But there is a possibility that he does see some playing time in this upcoming season, and I don't know if there's going to be a good enough team around him to keep him on his feet. Oh, excuse me. Sorry.
Definitely.
Sorry.
Getting a little choked up about Davis Mills. You feel too bad
I know.
for him?
I feel so bad for him coming up here playing for Houston. It just hurts, you know. You hate to see it.
But then going back, I do want to touch on the top three. Well, really the top two quarterbacks taken.
Yeah.
Of Zach Wilson and Trevor Lawrence, who do you think is better set up at their current team?
Well, I mean, and just looking off the draft class, I thought the Jets had a really good draft class. I really believe that. With taking Zach Wilson, and then they immediately their next three picks, best offensive guard in the class, and Elijah Vera Tucker, a legit weapon in Elijah
top
Moore.
5 wide receiver in the class, easy,
Absolutely.
possibly top 3.
I'm actually upset with ourselves. We never even included him in our mock draft, and there's a lot of potential that he could have gone up even further.
Oh,
yeah.
I'll talk a little bit about him when we talk about our worst picks. But yeah, no, I discovered him a little bit later, and I watched him just before we did our final mock draft. But I had already kind of filled out my board, and he is definitely somebody I would have put in the first round. A legit weapon. I'm kind of scared to go against him as a Patriots fan.
I just think he was on a bad Ole Miss team and then he sat out, I think, the final half because he didn't want to hurt his draft stock. He didn't end up doing that. But then Elijah Moore and then taking Michael Carter at the beginning of the 4th round is also good because I think that's a good value pick for that running back. And one of my worst picks of the draft is a running back, and I'll bring that up later because there was a lot of value that it could have been had later in the draft. But if we're looking at that and an organization that might be learning from their mistakes, also having a whole new regime, a new head coach, and a new GM. They have a new GM, correct?
Yeah, they have a new everything.
Yeah. So being like, no, this is what we're going to do, and we need to set him up for success. And the Jets' offensive line was not good, but I think putting Elijah Vera Tucker there next to Mikael Becton on the left side of that line, I think that's a solid blind side foundation for Zach Wilson over the next upcoming years. So you come in, and I think that's a good situation. And I would probably put Zach Wilson's situation a little bit better, only because I think there's a little bit more known about some of the pieces that are around him. If you include Corey Davis, and then you do have a veteran running back still, and it's Frank Gore, right? I don't know why I'm like Frank Gore. Yeah. And then also you do have a new head coach, but an experienced defensive coordinator that could help kind of reshape that defense. And you can have a solid team around him. Jacksonville does have a good team. However, though, with your new head coach being one of the better college coaches ever, there's still a lot of unknowns that is going to transition into the upcoming years. And it's going to be successful in the NFL. And Jacksonville is in a weaker division, so I think he'll get better success, might have a better record this year. But I think we'll just have to see for Trevor Lawrence on which guy can develop a little bit more. I think Trevor Lawrence is still going to be successful, and barring any injuries, which I hope doesn't happen. I feel like, though, now Travis Etienne wasn't my running back pick that I was speaking about. That could have been taken later, but I felt like Jacksonville could have gotten him a better weapon. I feel like we've talked about Cam Robinson being a good running back. Now, I don't think he's a 3-down back, and he's not as great of a catcher out of the backfield. But I felt like they could have gotten him a receiver such as Elijah Moore or potentially even Rashad Bateman was still on the board. And I felt like that might have helped improve Trevor Lawrence a little bit better, even though there is the chemistry with Travis Etienne. But all in all, not a bad situation for Trevor Lawrence. I think between the two, I think the Jets organization and their draft did a little bit better, I think, on And I think it was much more direct. And I really love that Elijah Vera Tucker pick where they traded those 2 third-round picks and be like, we're going to go
I like
get
the pick, not the trade.
Well, maybe they could have given up just 1/3 and maybe a later pick instead of both their thirds. But if you look at who they got, though, and they were very direct, like he wasn't going to make it that far. And you're looking at, especially guard wise, you're not really looking at anybody else that could come in and be like they could come and be a game changer and potentially a starter.
Yeah. I don't know. For me, I think they lost out on some good third-round picks by trading up for him when they could have gotten better overall value, especially on a roster that has a lot of holes. But I like the pick, so I don't want it to seem like I'm bashing the pick.
I know what you mean. No,
it's just the trade. Yeah. But I definitely agree with everything you said. I think the Jets, man, the AFC East. I mean, 3 years ago, when the Patriots won the Super Bowl, the AFC East was horrid. I mean, you had the Bills in the wild card, and then the Dolphins and the Jets were just like 2-14.
Well, it's funny too. It's starting to interrupt, but it'll be interesting 3 years from now if the Patriots are the worst team, and the Bills, Jets, and Miami are competing for a division. Once the Belichick is gone and all that stuff.
Yeah, no, I could definitely see it happening, and I think that the Jets absolutely knocked this draft out of the park. I still don't think that they're going to really be competing for a playoff spot. I think in a year or two, it'll be a little bit more in the question of whether the Jets can actually do that. And also, too, it's going to depend on the development of Zach Wilson. But I think Zach Wilson has a better chance to succeed than or has a better chance or a better situation coming out of the draft than Trevor Lawrence. So, and to me, that kind of wraps up the quarterback. I know we didn't really talk about Justin Fields that much, but
well, I get my one thing with him, and really my only question is: do you think he'll be the starter from day one?
It depends. I don't know. But for me, I don't know if it's worth it to start him day one because what's the difference between 6 and 11 now that there's 17 games or 7 and 10? The difference between the 11th and the 16th pick, in my opinion. So I don't know if you play him. I think he's going to need a lot more time to develop than some of the other guys because his offense at Ohio State was pretty simple. And so I think you play Andy Dalton. I don't want to say you play to lose, but I think Andy Dalton starts the large majority of the season.
I think so as well. I think it's going to get to the point, especially if I know Matt Nagy, the head coach there, and their GM are also, I think they're on the hot seat. And so if things aren't looking good, there's one thing to be on just to be a fan of a bad team, but then it's just a bunch of old veterans that are really going to make a difference. It might be more beneficial for them, especially the season's already being bad, to kind of throw in Justin Fields and just kind of see what happens. You know what I mean? Get him some live game experience. You do keep things simple, but also get his feet wet and try and give some promise, I think, for the organization. And also to really kind of understand, I think, how he plays. So then when the next draft comes up, we are picking 11th, or if you pick in the top 10, or maybe you get another wild card out of it, you still at least have some idea on what pieces you need to have around him, so to say. If you go in and don't really have that much film on him, you still might be kind of guessing in the dark on what the best pieces to put around him. So that's my only thing on maybe. I think he will start eventually towards the end of the season, unless if Andy Dalton and the Bears are just killing it. And in that case, then it's a win-win for everyone involved. Justin Fields still gets to learn and also could get some playoff experience and gets to see a veteran day in, day out on how he perfects his game and gets the team ready for Sunday.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I like the Justin Fields pick. The Bears organization has ruined so many quarterbacks that I do, in a way, have sympathy for him like Davis Mills. I just hope that Matt Nagy can finally figure out what he's doing with a young quarterback, and Justin Fields has success. Because from everything that I've read about him and like seen on TV, he seems like a great kid, and he is an incredible athletic talent.
Yeah.
It's just whether he can play quarterback in the NFL or not. And so,
well, and then this might be a situation because this pick, he easily could be the face of the franchise, but I think also Matt Nagy knows he needs to do well. Not Justin Fields, but the Bears need to do well because this also could be a situation of a coaching error. Because as we saw with Adam Gase, he seemed like he did ruin Sam Darnold. And Mitch Trubisky is out the door, obviously, and nowhere to be seen, really. And I remember I watched the Bears live here in Nashville, went to the Tennessee Titans Chicago Bears game this past season. And the Bears really did nothing that impressed me. And the Titans, they won the division, but their defense wasn't really that good. They
barely won the division too.
They barely won the division. The Bears really struggled to put points up on the board until the fourth quarter when the Titans kind of went into prevent defense. It just felt like they didn't really have that much like put together, so to say, and they were just kind of going through the motions. So some of that, when you see stuff like that, that comes from the top down. That's from the head coach and from the GM not really getting their players ready, also not really being the right guys, I think, for the job. So. We'll have to see with Justin Fields, but Justin Fields will start for sure at some point within the next couple of years. Matt Nagy will probably be gone from that organization.
Well, yeah, I don't know if it depends on the success they have in the next couple seasons, I think, for Matt Nagy. He definitely has the green light for this season to kind of take control, and we'll see. But I don't know. To me, Justin Fields is the biggest question mark coming out of the draft. I think Trey Lance has the best situation, and Zach Wilson's team had the best draft of the 5 quarterback teams. So
I don't know. I might disagree. I think Trey Lance still is the biggest question mark. I think Justin Fields, his only question mark is with the organization.
I think Justin Fields' team is the biggest question mark.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. I have no doubt about Justin Fields' athletic ability, but I just think that like him going to the Bears, I think the Bears are kind of questionable. That like last year they had 8 tight ends on their roster, and for me, I like that is like the what is that going to turn into? I think San Francisco for the next couple of years, whether Trey Lance is good or bad, they're still going to have a top 10 defense. They'll still have pretty good weapons in George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, and Brandon Ayuk. And so I think even if Trey Lance is average, the 49ers will be a 10-win team.
Yeah.
So
okay, that makes more sense. I thought we were talking about the players specifically.
No.
Justin Fields, as I said, player-wise, we know the talent's there. We felt like he was in a much easier system with the Ohio State system. But coming out, though, can he develop his decision-making process? Can he develop his vision and reading and doing his progressions? Because I think the talent's there. And that's what I was saying. Trey Lance, I think, is the biggest question mark as a player-wise for me personally. But now I see what you're saying. The organization-wise, the Bears probably because he's coming into a situation where the coach and the GM could potentially be their final year. But with Jacksonville and the Jets, new coaches and GMs, the Patriots, Bill Belichick's not going anywhere anytime soon. Dude can retire. They go 0-16 for a couple seasons in a row, and they still won't fire him. The dude is a god up there. And Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers, like you said, have been successful. They were just riddled with injuries last year, which is why they didn't make the playoffs.
Yeah. And so that kind of brings me into the next part of the show that I want to get into, and that's kind of our favorite picks. I was going to do favorite picks from the first round and then favorite picks from the whole draft.
Okay.
So I don't favorite pick in the first round. For me, I'm biased. I love the Mac Jones pick because I'm a Patriots fan. I think it's exciting for me, but to me that's not who I think is. That was not my. I'm not going to make that my favorite pick. And so I don't know. To me, my favorite pick of the first round was Rashawn Slater going to the Chargers at 13.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that to me was like, I don't know. I think they couldn't have done better. I mean, unless Penei Sewell was going to fall down there, but they got a top 5 talent at 13, and they didn't have to give up anything for it.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's the biggest deal because they had multiple holes to fill, and then they ended up getting a wide receiver in Josh Palmer in the 3rd round who has elite speed. And so,
did you mention Asante Samuel Jr. as well in the 2nd round?
well, yeah, Asante Samuel Jr. too. But
Yeah.
I just didn't have to give up.
Oh, you just meant offensive wise. I thought you meant all the picks.
Yeah. Offensive line.
General.
They didn't have to give up anything like the Jets to get up to 14 to draft Elijah Vera Tucker. For me, I just think that was like the best situation for the Chargers. I love the pick. I
agree.
I and what yours is, but
say it again.
I have a guess of what yours is. I'm going to write it down on this piece of paper real quick, and then I'll let you say your piece on who your favorite pick is.
So there was, I look at, there's a couple picks that I dislike a lot with in the first round, and I'm sure I'll get to those a little bit later. But there's a couple picks that I like. I remember when this pick happened. This one isn't my favorite, but when the Packers drafted Eric Stokes, 29th overall, that one was interesting just because of all the controversy. But if you actually look at it and what the Packers need and the value that they're going to be getting compared to some of the receivers that were available, if Rashad Bateman was there, I think you take him. There's an argument they could have taken Elijah Moore as well. Mm-hmm. But Eric Stokes, the Packers need help a lot with the secondary. And that was one of the things that really actually hurt them down the stretch in the NFC Championship game, actually. Well, kind of. But I digress. I really like the Kadarius Toney pick as well by the Giants. But probably my favorite one just because of the value that they got, and they could have taken them with the 14th overall pick, but ended up actually getting 2 more 3rd-round picks out of it. And then still getting Christian Darrisaw at 23rd overall was the Vikings pick. I think that was just an absolute phenomenal situation of them. And then also if you look as well at who they got there, they ended up getting Kellen Mond with that 3rd pick as well. And who did they get with their other pick here?
I'm not entirely sure. I was wrong, by the way. I put Zaven Collins at number 16.
Zaven Collins, I did like that pick as well. But then with their other pick, then they ended up getting Wyatt Davis, which fell all the way down to the third overall to the late 3rd round as well. So just with that trade alone, they still got their arguably the 3rd best offensive tackle in the draft. Then they got, I think, an underrated quarterback out of that, as well as then potentially future starting guard as well out of that pick. Mm-hmm. So to me, I think the best pick in the first round was that pick right there. I think there were a lot of really good picks, but if you look at the value coming from that one pick in that trade and that decision, I mean, the Vikings absolutely hit it. Had a home run with that trade right there.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's a very good point. I do agree that is tremendous value. I mean, Wyatt Davis had a lot of high 2nd round buzz. I mean, one of the top 3 guards in the class. And so that's a tremendous pick. Especially going back, still getting Darrisaw, and then also getting a future starting quarterback, I think, in Kellen Mond, and a starting guard in Wyatt Davis. No. I definitely agree.
And then
I was gonna say that leads us into our worst picks, which there were a few that were pretty questionable.
For me here, let me go. The Alex Leatherwood pick for me is in my top 3. I thought that was a little high, and also I felt like Christian Darrisaw was available as well. So I don't know why the Raiders didn't pick them. But for me, the worst pick, and I feel bad because I was very high on Najee Harris going in, but the Steelers with I don't like that pick at all for the Steelers. And I mean, don't. And this is the pick I was mentioning earlier. There is so much depth in the running back class that they could have gotten Michael Carter in the late third round, like he was still available. You could have even gotten someone else. Javonte Williams. He was gone by the early second round. But you need to address that offensive line position because running backs are only as good as their offensive line, and they don't have much of any offensive line. I think they lost at least two members of the offensive line.
They lost
one
two guys.
retirement. Yeah, and they need to fill that, and they did not even fill that position. Even start to address the offensive line, I think, until the third round. So that is where, to me, I look at that pick, and I think they could have gotten similar value from Najee, like from the running back position. Because also running backs are very replaceable. If you have a bad offensive line, there's not really much replacing that offensive line. I think Mel Kiper agrees with me because I'm looking at it now. He ranked the Steelers draft as the worst draft, so to say.
Yeah. No, they're definitely one of the biggest losers in this draft class. I don't think the Steelers, who usually draft pretty well, drafted well at all. I just don't think that they really met like their team needs all that much.
Well, I was gonna they didn't even address the quarterback position because we know Ben Roethlisberger is on his final legs unless they think Dwayne Haskins can come in and be the guy or Mason Rudolph and they're sticking with them. But even then on top of that, whoever quarterback's going to be coming in, you need to give him time to throw to the weapons. And like they drafted Pat Freiermuth in the second round, and I like Pat Freiermuth as well. And they dropped all the way down to him. But at the same time, though, you didn't even address the offensive line. And when you get into that late third round, you're starting to get into potentially some guys that could eventually start, but not starters from day one. They still need to get their sea legs in the NFL. And some guys probably aren't going to really be able to come in and be that effective if they do have to start from day one as a rookie. So that for me, I think is the worst pick. And they drafted a good guy, so I could absolutely be wrong. But all in all, there are a couple, maybe a little bit later on. The Bills drafted Gregory Rousseau. I know I said this live that like this is a fine spot to take him and he'd be a project. I also felt like there were some other guys that were available that they could have taken that went not that much farther after him. Like Christian Barber was one. He's more of a defensive tackle, so to say. But even guys like Azeez Ojulari or Joseph Asai or Jeremiah Usu-Koramoah were all there. And I felt like those guys could come in and I think immediately help from day one. So, anyways, so those are kind of my thoughts. What was
for me, I think there were a few reaches, but I still like the player. Like to me, J.C. Horn to the Panthers is a little bit of a reach. He's not a scheme fit there, and like they like to play zone coverage, and J.C. Horn is a press man corner. And his tape did not look good when they played zone coverage in college. And I don't know. I'm looking at it right now. Jamin Davis is a bit of a reach. I still just go back to that Alex Leatherwood pick. And I just kind of like I like the guy, but I still just don't understand why they would pick him at 17. To me, that one just doesn't make sense.
Well, especially then, I mean, do you think Alex Leatherwood is better than Landon Dickerson? I mean, if Landon Dickerson doesn't tear his ACL, I think he's a easy first round pick.
Definitely. And he was a middle second round pick with a torn ACL.
Yeah, and so he's going to be coming in. And he could play center. He could also easily play guard as well. He fits the size. Alex Leatherwood, there are some guys that were picked later in the round where there was some serious game film from the SEC. And they torched Alex Leatherwood. Like Alex Leatherwood held his own at times, but there's also a lot of times that he's blown off the ball. And so That's right. I thought that was kind of a reach, but that being said, that we're also not in the Las Vegas obviously scouting room, so maybe they're seeing something else and see some
Yeah.
easy technique work that they can fix. So,
But that's also too, like, the Raiders do this. Like, I think the Raiders, they watch a ton of film and then they make their board and they just pick whoever they think is best, or whoever I think they feel like is the best player for them.
mm-hmm.
And like, I do have to kind of give them props for that, because like they don't care that they're getting heat for it. I think they probably think they got a steal. I just don't see the middle first round talent in him, especially when guys like Christian Darrisaw, Tevin Jenkins are still on the board.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think that has to be my worst pick. I just think that's the biggest, like, what were you thinking? And then also too, another one that I also don't understand is Peyton Turner to the Saints at 28.
Yeah, I remember when that pick happened. We both looked at each other and we never even heard of the guy before.
Yeah.
So, the Saints had an interesting draft class, I felt like, because then they took even then another quarterback, Ian Bach, I think with their 4th round selection or something like that, which was just interesting too, because you would think out of all the positions in for the team that quarterback was one of the ones that they were pretty locked up and also committed to, with Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill has been with the team now for several years, knows the playbook really well. Jameis Winston has a lot of talent in the world. Then they go and, I mean, I think Ian Bach has some potential, but for an organization, kind of wasted a pick, I feel like, because you could have taken a receiver there or another weapon or some more defensive help, because they were almost exclusively defense up to that point. Actually, they were exclusively defense up to that point. And it just felt like it kind of – that goes along a little bit with the Peyton Turner pick as well. There were some other guys that were available that could have provided better impact. But who knows? We could be completely wrong. We could be saying this by this time next year. We're like, who thought that Peyton Turner pick was a bad pick?
Yeah, exactly. But anyways, that kind of leads us into the last part here. We'll wrap up pretty quick. But who was your overall winner and your overall loser from the draft?
Well, I will start out with the loser part. I'd still have to put the Steelers, I think, as the loser. I mean, I'm looking at their picks here, and I'm looking at everything that they needed and also the things that they got. And I mean, I'm sure there's some good value here in the later rounds, like their day 3 picks. I'm sure they can come in, but they only drafted 2 linemen. Kendrick Green from Illinois, center from Illinois, in the 3rd round, and Dan Moore Jr., offensive tackle from Texas A&M, in the 4th round. And I'm sitting there, and especially those are the only 2 offensive line picks. They didn't try and even build up and add more depth. So them, to me, I think they're losers by their own fault, so to say, because I feel like those picks. Do I like Najee Harris and Pat Freiermuth? Absolutely. But if you're the Steelers, though, they were much better offensive line options, I think. We already mentioned Landon Dickerson could come in and play center, so someone that they lost from day one, and so to say. But then also throughout that, they didn't even address the quarterback position either. So I don't know. I feel like running backs, like the Falcons, they didn't address the running back until the undrafted free agencies, and I'm fine with that, because running backs. Who was the guy that played for Denver several years ago, undrafted rookie that ran for 1,000 yards?
Peyton Lindsey.
Yeah, Peyton Lindsey. There are guys like that more often than people realize, because it is all about the offensive line that's in front of them. You know, Derrick Henry and Ezekiel Elliott are elite running backs because they do have a lot of like physical tools and characteristics that they come along with. But even then, if they didn't have that, with the offensive lines in front of them, they could still rush for 1,000 yards and have some serious impact for the team. And Pittsburgh, I think, really just kind of botched it there.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Pittsburgh, I mean, we kind of talked about it already. They had one of the stranger drafts that we've seen them have in the last few years. I just don't think that I think they may have gotten like some good players. I just don't think that they got good value for some of their players. So but my big loser for the draft, and I know you said you liked that the corner they took in the first round, but to me is the Packers.
Mm-hmm.
They won outside of their first and third pick. I don't necessarily think that a lot of their picks were that great. They didn't really address some of their major needs. I think they kind of needed some safety help. They did draft a couple corners. Their defensive line was fairly susceptible to the run game later in the season. They drafted one defensive lineman. But to me, losing Aaron Rodgers, or potentially losing Aaron Rodgers, and what's kind of come out about the organization the past few days, and having to go with potentially having to go with Jordan Love, to me, you just can't. You can't win in that situation, and so to me, I think they came out a slightly worse organization than when they went into it.
Yeah.
So.
That's a really good point as well. Especially then also if that is the scenario. I do still like that pick though, and the organization's got to do what they think is best. But I agree there. Aaron Rodgers is the face of the franchise, and lose the face of the franchise because let's say he does leave and goes to Denver. I know that's an option. If he does leave and goes elsewhere, that division is now completely up for grabs, and that division is going to be actually they might be the NFC East of next year because none of those teams are really good. There's potential for some of them, like Minnesota, so to say, but Green Bay, and it's interesting too to see Aaron Rodgers must really not like.
You mean the NFC North?
Yeah, the NFC North would become the NFC East, where they potentially.
I thought you were talking about the AFC West becoming the NFC East, and I was like,
no,
any way? I was like,
no. Sorry. No, the NFC North would become the NFC East, where potentially even the winning team has a losing record because some of those teams. Green Bay is the only team that is still all there, and it is interesting and. Aaron Rodgers must really be fed up with some of the people in the organization or the city or whatnot because it's an interesting situation that he's in because, I mean, he's almost guaranteed the division. Like, he's going to go to the division, and also if he's looking at the NFC as a whole right now, I don't think he's really going to face any serious competition until the NFC Championship. Now the verdict's still out on the Los Angeles Rams, so to say, but I mean he's getting everything that he wants. He's going to get another NFC division. He just had his first home game, NFC Championship home game, and they've made it to the NFC Championship 3 years in a row. Like the team is still good, and now. They're kind of a disadvantage because they keep drafting so late, so they can't go and get a Jamar Chase, so to say. But that's just what's interesting about this whole Aaron Rodgers saga and debate. It makes me kind of question some of it as well, and some of the sources. It almost kind of seems like when I take a step back and look at how good of a situation it is for Aaron Rodgers and that organization and how weak the division is, it almost seems like it's a prank. It really does.
Yeah.
You know,
I don't know. To me, I don't think the organization came out of the draft better than they were. I think even if they convince Aaron Rodgers to come back, I think it is a bad look for Aaron Rodgers in that locker room to come back after everything he's done. So for me, the Packers are the big loser of the draft. I don't necessarily think that they drafted all that well. I think their draft was just average. But then losing Aaron Rodgers or potentially losing Aaron Rodgers. I think damages the locker room and just the team as a whole. But so my winner for the draft, I think, is somebody that we kind of already talked about. For me, the Jets won. I think they have 3 first-round caliber players in Zach Wilson, Elijah Vera Tucker, and Elijah Moore.
Yeah.
And I just think that they set up really well through free agency, and then their draft just kind of like continued that. I know New England did that as well. I don't like New England's draft after on day 3 that much. But for me, I think the Jets definitely won with their picks. I think they were very, very good. They had one guy. I'm trying to think of his name.
The Jets.
Yeah, they had some good late round picks too.
Yeah, they had Jamin Sherwood in the 5th round after Michael Carter was in the 4th. Michael Carter, the 2nd, was in the 5th. Jason Pinnock, cornerback from Pittsburgh, was in the 5th. Hassan Hamza Najmuddin, safety from Florida State. I do remember seeing that pick, and I was like, I didn't realize he fell that far. But I think that's
the
a
one.
Good guy.
The safety. I just think the Jets are going to be an all-around more physical team next year, and I think that is just going to bode well for them. So I think they're the overall winner of the draft. And I'm a little nervous to be in that AFC East, which was once a cakewalk for the Patriots, but now it looks like in the next coming years we can have 4 teams in the NFC East that could be fighting for playoff spots.
Well, they all could make the playoff too, honestly. So there's a legitimate possibility that 4 through 7 are all AFC East representatives, just because they'd all be kind of battling it out and beating teams. And the division winner could potentially be 9 and 7, all depending on if some of the other teams are not doing well.
But it's not just because a team would be bad. It would just be like they have to play 6 division games and go 3-3. So I don't know. For me, the Jets won the draft. But who do you think won?
So I know I'm going to go with the team that we haven't talked about yet. Obviously, the Chargers could absolutely be worth this this honor, so to say. But and for them, just having Rashawn Slater be their first overall pick, and essentially, the team absolutely does have some needs elsewhere. But having Rashawn Slater fall to them, 13th overall pick, not having to give up any trades or any other draft picks to get him. I think to me already that's already like a B plus. I think for them, and then them getting Asante Samuel and then some good receiver weapons later on is worthy. But I want to talk about another team that we haven't talked about yet. And I know you're a little bit indifferent on Jalen Waddle, so to say, and have some questions about his hands. But I think if we're looking just at these first 5 picks, I think that Miami had, I think that they address a lot of key positions with guys that can come in from day one and start. Jalen Waddle could come in and be an absolutely serious threat for defenses and a great weapon for Tua. Jalen Phillips potentially could have been a top 10 defensive end and staying in his college town in Miami. I think he's going to be a great fit, and I think he's going to be tough for all the AFC East teams that they play. Then you get arguably one of the better safeties that was in the draft, Jevon Holland, that can come in and start on day one. And then you still got Liam Eichenberg as their second round pick to help protect Tua. So
and he's going to kick over to right tackle. It seems like, because they have Austin Jackson at left tackle, and that's right tackle is a much easier spot than left tackle. So
that to me right there, they picked 4 guys and 4 picks, all within the first 42 picks that will probably be day one starters, I think. And I think they all can legitimately provide some serious impact to that team. And you look, and it's kind of, you just talked about the Jets, but you look at the AFC East team. Like these two teams, I think can come in next year. And Miami was already pretty good. They just missed out on the playoffs, and Tua is going to have now a full year of experience, and the whole organization is going to be around him.
And he's a year removed from his hip injury.
Yeah. So that to me, I think just to talk about a different team, as the Chargers as well could have been another team that could have been number one. But to me, I think Miami is another team that had an absolutely great draft class with the value that they got at all their picks.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. It was definitely an interesting draft. We are going to be doing a division by division breakdown of all these teams. So make sure to hit the like button and subscribe. And we will see you guys next Tuesday at 8 p.m.